Hello, welcome back to Story Mantra. I'm Lindsay Preston, one of your hosts. I am here with Anju Gattani, my co-host, and we are so excited that we have Lainey Cameron back again this week to continue our discussion and to talk more about what happens when you actually get that book out there and the process of marketing it and actually getting book sales.
Yay, pleased to be here.
Hey everyone, welcome to Story Mantra, and a little bit about Lainey. Well, in fact, a lot about Lainey and very little because she's so accomplished. Lainey Cameron is an author of women's fiction and a recovering tech industry executive. Her award-winning novel, The Exit Strategy, is a #1 Amazon bestseller. The book was inspired by a decade of being the only woman in the corporate boardroom, sorry. But there are scenes which are sizzling and spicy.
It's a perfect Freudian slip, actually.
It's been called a rallying call for women to believe in themselves and join together. And all you have to do is read the book to see why it climbed and scaled to the #1 position that it did. There's a lot of spice. It opens with a firecracker bang. And Lainey is a digital nomad. She's an avid Instagrammer and a proud member of Women's Fiction Writers Association. She believes community makes the author's life worthwhile. A little bit about her accomplishments. The book came out in the summer of 2020. Within a few weeks, it skyrocketed to the #1 Amazon bestseller. It's a gold medal in 2020 Reader's Choice Awards for women's fiction. It's a finalist in the 2020 Best Book Awards by American Book Fest. Lainey's been chosen as a notable indie for 2020 by Shelf Unbound, which means she is an indie author. But that's a very accomplished indie author. And she's a #1 Amazon bestseller in feminist books. And if you look at the link below, you'll see all of Lainey's links, including the Amazon purchase link. So just look down there. And you'll also see links to her website and other information on how you can join Lainey on her other videos because she's huge on social media. So Lainey, welcome.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. And here's the book for what it's worth. If I can ever get the camera angle right. There we go.
Yes. So you know when you read that book, you want a latte or a cappuccino or a mocha just by your side. But Lainey, it's incredible, your achievements, what you have managed to gather in less than 6 months of having been published, especially during pandemic, with a book that is the heart of your career and from where you're coming from. So I had a lot of questions. And I think the first one I wanted to really understand is, you're a marketing guru. Where do you start with author branding? Lindsay, did you have any questions on that as well?
Probably once she gets started, but I'll let her jump right in.
Wow. Yeah. So your author brand is about who you are. It's about your personality. It's about the kind of reading experience someone's going to have when they read your book. So if you've watched my last video, you might have noticed I'm a bit of a fast talker. Well, that's on brand because my book is fast paced, right? If I got on and I talked really slowly, you would think I wrote a really calming book. Well, I didn't. I wrote a fast paced book. It's a page turner. I worked really hard at that. But your brand is about who you are, but it's also about the promise of what that reading experience will be for the reader. And so if you think about how it comes out on whichever social media you choose, let's say Instagram, if you're a calming brand and you've written a book that is a beautiful poetic book, you want your presence to feel that way. You want to have beautiful colors. You want to have flowers. You want to have calming colors. If your book is more fast paced and that's kind of what the promise of value is for the reader, you want that to come across too. So your brand to me is a combination of who you are and what that promise of that book or the books you write is or are. Is that is or are? Never get my grammar right. For the reader. And so like you can have a tagline. A lot of authors, once they have multiple books, they'll have a tagline that describes the kind of books they have, right? So I write Southern fiction with a fun swizzle, for example, and that helps people go, okay, those are the kind of books this author writes. It's all kinds of fun, different challenges if you actually write in multiple genres. And that's where people sometimes do different pen names because they want to have purity to their different brands. It's not essential. But I would say your brand, it's a combination. It's who you are and it's what your book is going to bring to the reader and trying to portray that and get it across in all of your interactions with the world.
Well, Lainey, here's a thought in terms of, someone who's beginning their social media handles. When you look at somebody's Instagram page, for example, someone who's already published, who's got a, backlist of books and events and stuff to put out, and you haven't, and you're a newbie. How do you know what Instagram post, for example, to put up, which would, respectively connect with your book, yourself as your brand, and interest people?
This is such a great question. I'm going to credit Dan Blank, who's written a lot of great stuff about this. He has a book called Be the Gateway, and he has a great newsletter and some other things. He kind of specializes in helping authors build their brand and take it out there. And he really says, you're trying to build your community and you want to show work in progress. Now, by that, he doesn't mean you have to show like chapters of the book that you're finished, but you want to show behind the scenes. So you want to tell people the actual progress of what you're working on well before you have a book. So don't wait until the moment that your book is out in the world and then you're like, ta-da, here's my baby, isn't it beautiful? You actually want to show what you went through because people relate to the struggle. So I was sharing as I went that I was querying. I was sharing that I got rejections as I was querying. And a lot of writers were asking me questions and they were relating to me because they were going through the same thing and they were getting rejections and we were able to commiserate together. And those have become some of my best supporters as I come out into the world with my book. These are people I have a connection with. You're looking to make real connections, and writers are actually some of the easiest people to make connections with well before you're published. And so I like what Dan says, which is like, share the behind the scenes of the process. Don't feel like you have to have something polished to put into the world. For example, Alison Hammer does this great thing on Wednesdays where she shares One Line Wednesdays, and she shares just one line of the work in progress that she's working on, generally a book that won't be coming out for another year or two yet, but people get really excited seeing inside the book. People get excited by the process. And the next week, I'm going to start sharing a whole bunch of things about what it's like to produce an audiobook, because my book is getting turned into an audiobook. And I have some behind the scenes with the narrator and some goofs of her messing it up and going wrong moments and stuff. So like that's one piece of advice, is share the behind the scenes. And then the second is share whatever you're passionate about. So like a lot of people are passionate about books, obviously, because they're an author. So that's an easy thing to share as books you love. But what about dogs? Like some people are passionate about dogs. They have a dog that they love to death, and people love dogs, for goodness sakes. Dogs, cats, that's the easy one. Baking, travel in my case, but like, don't feel like you have to keep it to only your writer stuff. People want to know the real you and what you are passionate about. So when you're thinking about what to post about, I would say pick 3 areas that you feel comfortable with. So that might be behind the scenes as a writer, books you love, and whatever your other passion is, dogs, travel, macrame, crochet, whatever it is. People love seeing what you're excited about.
Well, how do you balance it then? How do you balance the writing life with the social media life? Because you're trying to keep both up and running. Because once you've got an account, you can't just leave it.
One of the best pieces of advice I've seen is don't do it if you hate it. So I think this is one of the things that happens with writers is they think, okay, I have to have Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatever else, right? Pinterest and, whatever is new next week. And I'm going to have to do all of these and I'll force myself to do all this stuff. And they absolutely hate it. You know what? When you hate doing something, people know you hate it. It comes across that you hate it. All you're doing is convincing people you hate that thing. And so, my advice would be pick one that you either like or can tolerate. Okay. So like for me, it's Instagram. I enjoy being on Instagram because there are lots of bookstagrammers. I love following bookstagrammers and seeing what other people are reading. I love supporting my fellow authors, and I do various things to do that. I do Instagram interviews with authors and various things. So like for me, Instagram is what I love. My Facebook is predominantly reposts from my Instagram that are automatically posted over to Facebook. In fact, I post a subset of my Instagram on my Facebook. Now, every so often I'll have something that's Facebook specific, like an event that I'm doing. I'm part of the Blue Sky book chat group on Facebook. That is somewhere I spend time, and I've decided to put my energy there. I have an author page. Honestly, I don't spend a ton of time on it because I don't feel like it's the highest value thing. Now, if someone comments, I will go respond to them, but I don't spend hours on it every week. I mostly put content from my Instagram and bring it across. So like I would say, pick the thing that you like, that you enjoy, and put your energy there, and be okay with letting the rest go. I spend very little time on Twitter. I do have a Twitter account. I connect with other writers. I boost other writers when I know that someone's got something important to say. But honestly, I hate Twitter because it's toxic, and I hate seeing people getting torn apart. And I love Instagram because it's positive. So that's where I chose to go. Other people love Twitter and they love the politics and they want to get into the politics of it. That's them. They love that and they should do that. So I would say pick your thing. And the other thought is, work out how you can add value to other writers and to readers. Like, people kind of think that it has to be all about their book, but if you look at the ratio of what I post on social media, I probably spend 60% or more of my time posting about other people's books, not me. And so really think about what you can do to give value to others, and your presence will just rise naturally as a consequence of that. Like, why I have a following on Instagram mostly is because I was sharing travel shots that people enjoyed and they could kind of live through my experiences. But the other half of it is I helped a lot of people who are women's fiction writers in ways that I could when I was not a published writer. So I could beta read for other people. I could help them with marketing, and I could help them with graphics because that's something I had as a skill. I ran the workshops for women's fiction writers because I knew how to get online and manage forums. And so these things like come back to you 100-fold. So that my biggest advice I give to people who are at the beginning of the journey is work out how to add value to other people in your world. That will come back to you again and again because you'll have built your community and your network, and those are the people who are going to support you when your book comes out.
Wow, that which answers my question of your priority value system. So that really helps. But now, how do you balance all of that with the writing the next book or the current work in progress? Because you've only got 24 hours in a day.
Yeah, I personally, what I do is I try to hold my mornings for writing. So whether it's doing a video interview like this, so whether it's marketing for my own book, or it's doing a video interview where I'm recording a video of an author to put on my Instagram, with the exception of I send my post to Instagram first thing in the morning because that's when it gets the best views. But you can do that the night before. You can tee it up the afternoon before and then just hit post the next morning. So I tend to try and hold my mornings. And when I say morning, from like 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. for writing and editing, and all the other stuff, I only let it be in my day later. Now, I'm lucky that I'm doing this full time. A lot of people, most people aren't, right? So you've really got to think about, I think, blocks of time that you're going to be pure to. So if your writing time is 5 to 6 a.m. before the kids get up, don't give it up because someone else, for marketing, for social media, for whatever, like work out what that pure writing time is and protect it at all costs. Because otherwise the other stuff will just expand and expand and expand and expand. And like people like us, we have lots of ideas. Like I've got an idea right now that I want to put together a marketing program for authors. And I haven't executed on it yet because I haven't had the bandwidth that it would get in the way of my writing right now. So it's like sitting there on the side for when I can do it properly and not have it destroy something else. I've also got an idea to make my interview series into a podcast. And that one will probably happen faster because I realize it's manageable and I can do it in manageable chunks of like 30 minutes a day and keep it boxed. But yeah, it's very easy for this stuff to suddenly take over your life. And then you're doing nothing but marketing. And honestly, for the average author, if we spent 100% of time marketing our book, we would not sell that many more books. Like the way it works is not that, if I spent all my time on Facebook groups talking about my own book, would I really sell that many copies more of my book? Or did I sell copies just because of a special offer, or because another author put it out there to their newsletter, or because of a moment in time, like a launch? Like I think we feel bad when we're not spending all our time marketing, but the reality is, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. I talked to someone yesterday who's got a book deal this week, and she felt bad because she felt like she needed to learn how to do Facebook ads. And over our conversation over an hour, I said, listen, I'll show you how to do this, but let me tell you, Facebook ads are so complicated and convoluted, and you have to get really into them, and you have to test them, and you have to see where they're working, and it will make she had a BookBub, a US BookBub, which is a phenomenal way to sell thousands of books. I said, it will make like a 1% difference in your BookBub results for the week. So do you really want to go learn all that and do all that? I mean, maybe pay someone if you really care, but it's so much of your mental energy as an author to go learn that thing, which is Facebook advertising. And it's going to make this much difference at the end of the day. So maybe just don't waste your energy there. And so I think we think things will have a big impact, or we hope, or we wish. And my advice is, if it's a wish kind of thing, like, hey, if I do this, maybe it'll work, put a little bit of time, but don't put a lot of time into those things, and then see if they get you anywhere. Don't try and do everything because maybe it'll work, because a lot of things just aren't worth your time.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, that we talked about, remember, in the Women Fiction Writers Association workshop that you handled, where we had about 15 or 20 of us. We all addressed marketing issues that we face. So my big question here is, what are some of the marketing perspectives you have on these big media, social media companies who do stellar amounts of work for a phenomenal fee. Where do writers start on that end?
Social media companies. So do you mean like a publicist, or do you mean like
Both
someone
ways.
who manages social media operations?
Publicists, social media marketing, and some of them are really book marketing companies specific to books.
Right.
They do tours, they'll give you pick and choose a la carte menus, but the phenomenal rates just,
So there's so many things out there. This is such a big question. So the traditional publicist. So if you're with a big publisher, they may have an in-house publicist. And so your first decision is, am I going to rely on the in-house publicist with my big publisher, or am I going to hire my own external publicist in addition? If we're talking publicity first, publicity is publicity is awareness. It's that very top level of the pyramid in marketing. Awareness doesn't necessarily make people buy. It makes people know about your book so that when the opportunity to buy comes around, they're more likely to take that opportunity. To give you an example, publicity might make a book a really hot book and you'll sell a certain number, but then the day you have a book bob, they have an opportunity to buy that at a reduced price. And they're going to go, oh, I recognize that book. Yes. As opposed to, I've never seen that book. I don't know, maybe. So publicity at the top level is awareness, but that isn't quite the same as giving someone a point in time opportunity that makes them make a decision like a price promotion will. So yes, there are exceptions. If you're a New York Times bestseller list, there are always exceptions to the rule. But so when you're talking publicity, first choice, big publisher, do you want to go in-house, or are you going to hire your own person to work with the in-house publicist? If you're with a small publisher, they probably don't even have an in-house publicist. Mine does not. Those kind of publicists are going to cost you a pretty penny. You're talking minimum $10,000 up to $25,000 for a decent publicist. If you want a publicist who specializes in New York Times bestsellers, you're talking closer to 50 grand. So, first thing is like expectation setting. That's a lot of money, right? And I'll be honest, it's a 50-50 on whether it works. And this is coming from the marketing person who used to do publicity, okay? It's a 50-50. That publicist, and I'm talking about with a good publicist, okay? Not with like someone who just put up their shingle and created a website and you can't see anything they've done before, okay? A good high-end publicist for books, 50-50 chance that you'll get anything worth the money out of it. Because, and I know this looking at the 2020 debuts, you can have two books that are equally wonderful books, that are well-written, that are fabulous books. And when that publicist goes out and they start talking to all the media outlets, one book just sparks the imagination. There were certain books that's happened for in 2020, and it was a unique environment where people wanted to read happy books and they didn't want to read sad books and all kinds of things going on. And some books just took the imagination and they just got covered everywhere.
Was that because of book covers, Lainey? Because book
covers help, covers can detract, but it's more the content of the book. It's the type of the book. It's the story of the book. Is that story hitting the market at a moment that it sparks the imagination? And you can have an equally well-written book that perhaps the year before might have been the book that everybody sparked all the imagination, and you bring it out during a pandemic, and it just isn't the book everybody wants to talk about that year. And so that's why I say it's like a 50-50 hit rate, because I think you can spend a lot of money on a publicist and get very little value from it, or you can spend a lot of money on a publicist and your book is everywhere. And it could go either way. And what I advise writers is just be cognizant of that and okay with that when you make that investment. Don't make that investment expecting that it's a given that if I put this money in, my book will be everywhere and be at every magazine on every list.
Right. So setting expectations.
Yeah, and there are other ways to get your name out. So like, I don't have a publicist, right? So what I did, I invested in a Bookstagram tour, which is someone that helped me reach out to a lot of people who cover books on Bookstagram. And that got me both reviews. It probably got me around 30 odd reviews, just that one tour that I did. And it got the book out there and generated awareness. And I did Bookstagram outreach on my own because I've been on Bookstagram and I've been participating. I had a lot of people I knew that I could reach out to and say, hey, would you like an early copy of my book? I'm willing to give you an early review copy. And so the combination of those two things, plus author friends who wrote blurbs for my book, got me up to my first 60 reviews without me having to really hound people. And that's, again, back to if you build your network, when you go and ask them for a favor in return, you won't be writing that email to someone you've never talked to before. Right? When you write asking for a blurb, it's really nice if you actually know that author and this is not the first time you've ever written or interacted with them.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot of information, Lindsay. I've got a whole bunch of questions here. Do you want to squeeze one in before I throw out my next one?
So you only have time for one more. So I will let you take the one more, and maybe Lainey will be kind enough to join us again.
Yeah, Lainey, you have to join us again. What is your one writing tip, which we always ask our guests, your writing tip, and then what's your marketing tip?
That's the first time I've been asked for one marketing tip. This is an interesting question.
Okay, I'm going to divide that into two. What's your marketing tip for debut 2021 authors? And what's your marketing tip for debut authors who have come out last year or the year before even?
I think for debut 21s, having gone through this with you in the community of 2020 debuts, my tip is definitely leverage the power of the community. So don't underestimate that when you tweet something once, you know, however many people see it, when the 200 authors who are part of your community tweet it at the same time, you are getting out to so many more potential readers. And if someone reads like a 21 debuts book and they loved it, and then they see that debut saying, you know, I loved this other book, which is like mine, then the reader is very likely to give that book a try. Don't underestimate that authors saying they like a book has huge sway over readers. We're assumed to know what we're talking about, and we're putting a little bit of our own kind of credibility on the line. So we wouldn't recommend a book that we think is terrible just because it's our buddy's book, right? Like we kind of still have to manage like our own reputations. So we have a lot of clout. So like when Carrie Lunsdale actually put my book in her group for her top fans, that had huge value because she's saying it's a good book. And her top fans are very similar to people who would like my book, and she's a huge bestseller. And so that had way more value to me than some article in some publication that I didn't make it into, right? So like that was actually what really boosted my book, was other authors promoting it and saying like, this is worth your time, reader. And those authors have credibility. So I would say you get that same effect from being part of the community of debuts, and don't underestimate that helping each other out can be your biggest asset during the year that you're debuting.
Can I ask one more question, Lindsay?
Yeah.
I'm
the timekeeper.
Oh, no, there's just so much. There's so many questions spiraling. The next one that I have is, you know, all these social media trolls, which we talk about in our private groups, and it's pretty grim, the situation for a lot of us. How should we handle that, and what should we not do?
Oh, I've been
relatively... And the next question, what are you working on now?
Okay. I've been, and my marketing tip, I didn't answer that question, is
yes.
I'm not sure if I had a little more time to think about it, I might answer it differently. Two things: get educated and be realistic. And I'm referring to being realistic about what your publisher will and won't do for you. A lot of people have unrealistic expectations just because they haven't educated themselves. And they think like, well, if I have a big publisher, they'll do everything and I don't need to do any marketing. Or if I have self-published, there's no way I can get, like, a lot of misunderstandings around marketing. I could do a whole conversation just on that. So like, get educated and go in with realistic expectations, and you won't be disappointed. And that means understanding what you have to do, what the publisher is going to do, etc. And be yourself. So those would be my two marketing tips. And sorry, repeat your question, Anju. I could.
Social media trolls. How do we handle
social media
that?
Trolls? Okay, I've been so lucky that I haven't yet been targeted, and I actually expected to be, interestingly, because my book is a feminist book, and it has a male character who is not a particularly nice male character, who the two women are trying to escape over the course of the book, and they bond and become friends. And I expected to be targeted by people, and maybe I shouldn't put this into the universe, but anyway, because of that subject matter, I expected to be targeted, and it might still happen. But I saw so many 20 debuts go through this last year. And the first thing you have to really, first thing, step away from the computer, take a deep breath. If you can walk around the block like you're not in quarantine, do it. Step away from the computer is the first piece of advice, because your emotions are going here and your rational brain is not thinking right now. And the worst things I've seen are when someone did not step away from the computer for 30 minutes, and you know they wrote that response in those first 30 minutes where their brain was not functioning on a normal level. It was functioning on an emotional level.
Right.
The next thing is, you have to understand that this is about them, not you. Everybody reads the book through their own personal lens of their life experiences. So it's kind of like someone can say something in a conversation that will totally trigger you, right? That will just send you off, you'll fly off the handle as a person. And is that really about what they said, or is that about what's going on in your brain and your personal history? It's the same thing going on. When someone is triggered by a book, It's about them and their personal history and what's going on in their head. And it has nothing to do with you or your book. And it's very hard when someone writes you a 1-star review and says something that is untrue, for example. I've had one of those where someone wrote a whole bunch of stuff that was just, I was like reading it going like, I think this might be a different book. Like it just wasn't even true. It wasn't an opinion. It was just wrong. And so it's very hard to not respond, but you gain nothing by responding. It's kind of like trying to convince someone who has the complete opposite politics to you right now that you're right and they're wrong. Has anyone tried that? It doesn't work,
great
right?
comparison. What a great comparison given the situation we're in.
Yeah. And so like, it's exactly the same. So you have a choice in that conversation. You can shout at each other for an hour, or you can walk the other way, because nothing you say is going to change that person's opinion. And you can decide when to speak up. So like, when will I speak up? If someone is being bullied, I will speak up, because I'm not going to just watch that. But if someone writes a review about your book and they say they don't like it, and it's even incorrect, there's nothing you gain from responding to that. You're getting nothing out of that other than potentially if they have a crew that supports them no matter what, now you've pissed all of them off and they're coming after you too. Like there's just no, there's no upside to responding. And you have to first remember it's not about you, it's about them and something that triggered them.
Right.
That's great advice. And we have to close out now, but Lainey, I hope you'll join us again another time this year.
And what are you working on next, Lainey? Quickly.
Oh, next, I'm working on my second book. I just finished the first draft during NaNoWriMo, and if I were guessing, it's going to be coming out in 2022. But in the near term, I'm actually listening to the audio on the exit strategy, which will be coming out in the next few months.
Congratulations.
And you'll see the link for the audiobook just below the video as soon as Lainey gives it to us. And is that it, Lindsay? Do I not get another question now?
Nope. Your time is up.
Time up.
Thank you guys so much. And we will be back again next week. And hopefully Lainey will be back again this year. So thank you, everyone.
So fun. Thanks.